Welcome back to another video here at Seth's Garage. We are still waiting on Jay to drop off his car. Last time you saw this thing, we were getting all the maintenance and everything together, got the transmission on. But since we've got probably a day or so to kill, I figured I'd get back into the Integra for a little bit and drop that engine before we drop Jay's engine on his car. So let's go ahead and get into this. Last time you saw the Integra, we were doing all the clutch hydraulic stuff with this Hush performance kit that's got this little billet piece. Looks really nice, works well, and I don't have to spend all the time that I was spending creating the kit that I was creating for it, which was very difficult. So that was a great solution. Now that everything is pretty and it's working, it's time to unfortunately take it all back apart so that the transmission can get sent out. I can finish some internal work that needs to happen to this. We're gonna button up some stuff in the bay, we're gonna pretty up wiring, all that kind of stuff. So because there is so much in this bay, we kind of have to do it in stages. So I think first is going to be intercooler piping, intercooler, all of that, then turbo components, and then we can do intake manifold, fuel system stuff, drop the engine, and separate these two. So instead of boring you with time lapse, we're just going to do it with the old school snap trick or photo method. We'll see what happens. Let's try this. Nope, didn't really work. Let's try that again. All right. Intercooler piping off there and here. Now let's do all of the turbo. Maybe take this off first. All right, turbo is out. Now I'm gonna clean up some of the AC stuff. I need to get the compressor and some of the lines out, and then I think we'll do intake manifold and fuel stuff. Intake manifold is out. We've got the AC compressor hoses out of the way so the compressor can just drop with the engine. Next we're gonna do the few couple coolant lines that are on this thing, and the radiator's just kind of being held in by the pressure because it doesn't have the top bracket. So all of this will get deleted, and then we'll continue seeing what else we need to drop this engine. Radiator and hoses are out of the way. While I have better access, I also removed the clutch slave cylinder out of there so that this can drop. And I think next up is going to be rear motor mount with T-bracket and the two axles underneath. All right, we got axles and the strut forks out of the way. So now that that rear motor mount is gone, I can go ahead and get the quick jack in, drop the one mount on the side here, the other one on the transmission there, and get this whole thing out of the car from the bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and hook everything up, and we'll pull this motor. And if you're a keen-eye viewer, you might have seen Jay's fit is also here. So this will be getting the motor pulled out of it as soon as that motor is out of that. So yeah, gonna get that out, transmission pulled, sent out to get fixed, and then we'll start doing an engine swap on that guy. We got the engine dropped from the Integra. If you're hearing some background noise, that's because there's a whole lot of construction going on outside, so excuse that. I still have to remove transmission from engine right here, but also have gotten Jay's car up on the lift. This is his 2008 Honda Fit Sport. It's gonna be the third silver fit here today. As Nick's car is about to show up, we're gonna be doing some cool wheel stuff with that. But it's a pretty basic 200 plus thousand mile. I think it's like somewhere near 250, 225, something like that. Gets the snot beat out of it at the track and usually behaves pretty well. The transmission needed to get swapped because he put an LSD in my spare transmission, and I had another engine sitting on a stand with about 100,000 miles less than what this has. So I said, you know what, screw it. We're already going through all the trouble of dropping stuff from and getting the trans out. Let's just swap the engine in. This is going to be getting a turbo kit by Unequal Fabrication. This is going to be having the TD04 13G, I believe. While my black car is going to be getting the GT25 54R. So we're going to be doing very similar builds and seeing how they are compared, you know, at the track, on the street, stuff like that. I think it'll be a really cool thing to put out there. This is currently just full bolt-ons, sort of, kind of. Intake, header, exhaust, I think it still has the factory cat mid-pipe. It makes 109 wheel horsepower, I believe, on Honda. Very healthy numbers, even for a high mileage engine. These things usually tend to work really well. They're very basic, primitive engines in the realm of things. Timing chain, you know, it doesn't have hydraulic lifters, any of the fancy, like, crazy VTC actuators or anything like that. So they usually take a beating pretty well as long as you're, you know, up to date on maintenance, valve lash is set, oil is good. So this will sit on the side and probably eventually get an overhaul and a piston rod combo so I can up the boost on my car at some point. But for now, we're gonna tear this whole thing apart and drop this thing. We have started taking everything off, did a bunch of the wiring, got everything disconnected from the fuse box. We've got the hydraulics for the clutch out of sight. Basically everything other than shift cables on this side is done. We still have to get to the wiring for the ECU and everything back here, which we'll do later because my buddy Nick dropped by real quick with his silver fit. And, you know, we always got to do dumb stuff here. So tried my Advans on the front with some Regas on the back, and I think this is happening. I think I'm going to run this setup on my car because it's way too damn good. And then in the theme of continuing to do dumb stuff I shouldn't be doing, I think we're going to try the RGs, which I think at stock height look pretty good on his car, which has a set of H&R springs, to see if we can clear the quarter without too much work on these 16s, which run a 205/50. It's a bit taller of a wheel than what the factory specs are. So we're going to do that and see what happens. Damn, Advance, always the right choice. These look so good on the car lowered. This is with maybe a finger or two gap between the fender and the wheel. We'll call it finger and a half, versus OEM height here. The front especially looks really goofy because there's like a 3-finger gap. So you can see the difference there. So now we're gonna play more wheel roulette and do yet another different set of wheels on the cool lowered car. We got these badass old school Enkei R02s. They are a discontinued Enkei that was only made for what, like 2 years? Probably. I think they were only made like 2 years. The stock photo for these wheels from Enkei is actually a really cool EK. Which is what they were on prior. These came from Mr. Gridlife himself, Adam Jabe, so shout out Gridlife. And they've got some Sticky Boy 225s on them. I don't know if they're 6.5 or 7 wide, but they sure do look good on here. So that about wraps it up for the work on Nick's car. We also did some stuff with the liners here that were all falling out of the car. We removed the front shield that was just dragging on the ground. So this thing's ready to go. Now that our little side mission's done, we can go ahead and get this thing up in the air. I'm going to do all of the fluids, drain everything, start pulling axles, mounts, exhaust components, everything, just to get this thing freed so we can just dangle in here and we can drop it. this is exactly what you don't want to see. I knew when I took off the torque mount here, that wasn't even a year old, I don't think. It was all torn up that the motor mounts would be bad. But I undid this back bolt for the engine mount that's on the subframe. It's like kind of an engine mount, kind of a transmission mount. But yeah. All the other motor mounts, well, the 2 other motor mounts are still connected. And it should not have that much movement. So I'm glad that we ordered motor mounts to do this because, yeah, this thing is in pretty bad shape. So I got just about everything done underneath the car. I also undid the AC connections right there. Well, not the connections, but the compressor. Because it actually bolts into the oil pan. And there's no bracket. So this will kind of hang out of the way. And the whole engine will drop. Won't have to open up the AC system, which will make this job a lot cheaper and easier. And yeah, I'm going to remove this bracket and then bring the car down, start doing axles and stuff, and continue this job. You'll notice the car is not where it was in that last shot. GoPro died halfway through the time lapse, and I just kept working to try to get this thing finished up. I got the hubs pretty much ready to pull. The axles are completely rusted to the hubs, so I've got some lower mileage knuckles going on, which will be having new wheel bearings pressed in and extended ARP studs thrown on. So I'm just going to pull these as a unit. I did have to pull the whole ABS sensor so I can try to do this on the bench and get the sensor out of these hubs, which are also pretty crusty in there. I'm going to try to get those out and not break them so that we don't have to replace them and spend more money. I'm also going to start pulling all the radiator stuff. These are very tightly, let me tighten that up so I don't lose it, very tightly tucked in underneath the core support on these, so it's a bit of a chore to try to get all this out. So I'll be working on that next, getting hoses out and making room because I'm going to try to not touch the subframe this go around, I think. So the engine will have to move forward a little bit and then out so that the back of the transmission can clear the subframe. So yeah, again, going to continue trucking through and getting this thing ready to pull and see how far we can get today. I'm hoping to be able to get this done by the end of day today, but we will see. Small update here. I've gotten the radiator out so that the engine can move forward and clear the subframe and drop out. I'm hoping this works. I've never done it this way. I've actually never taken a fit engine out. I've only done a ton of transmissions. So let's learn. And then I also got both of the knuckles out on both sides with the axles. The axles are seized to the hubs, so I just have to pull them as assemblies. Got new stuff coming in. So yeah, I'm just, I think, coolant hoses for the heater core and wiring to the ECU away from dropping this thing. So I'm going to get that done real quick off camera, and then we'll get to the exciting bit. Got the wire harness out of the way. Got the last coolant hoses out. I had forgotten that fuel and evap lines exist, so I took care of those too. And now we're going to test the strength of the mighty Harbor Freight welding table. This is their cheapy adjustable table, not their nicer one that they just came out with. It states on the website it's good for 350 pounds. We're about to test that because that's about what the engine weighs. I grabbed a couple pieces of plywood that I just quickly cut to length to try to even out the load, and then I've got a couple pieces of wood that will go that way to support the engine. Trans can come out, engine can go off in the corner. So yeah, let's get to the juicy part. And I'm calling it the juicy part because I know there's going to be coolant pouring all over me, which I'm very much not looking forward to. But yeah, let's get this thing out of here. Got her out. It was only moderately sketchy. The engine was only swaying a ton, so I barely want to touch it. And the first thing I'm going to do is get it off this table because I'm terrified it's just going to tip over and pin me underneath it. So that's going to be first. Don't tell OSHA what we just did. But luckily, I didn't get any coolant on myself. It did end up all over my floor, so that'll be a cleanup thing later. And I think that actually getting the engine back in is going to be a ton easier with my other table that can roll a lot more easily and is definitely more sturdy than this thing is. But yeah, now to get this on the ground, separate the trans because this is going into my car, and then start picking all the accessories out of this and putting them onto that so we can put that up into this and this can go to the racetrack. Spent a little time doing some cleanup work, got the engine on a stand, the floor is not a disgusting mess anymore. But I think this will be a good place to wrap up this episode. In the next one, we will get everything, all the accessories, engine harness, everything else that we need, some topping components off of this engine, get that on the engine that will be going in the car, get the engine bay ready with new engine mounts and doing some cleanup work and stuff like that, and maybe even nestle this thing, well not this thing, but the other engine, back up into the car and continue getting the process ready. I've got about 2 weeks. Let me check my calendar real quick. It is the 12th? 13th. April 13th right now. And I've got until the 29th to get this car on the road so that it can be at a track event at Road America. So that gives me roughly 2 weeks to get all of this sorted, car dialed. Still need to schedule an alignment appointment. Still doing a decent amount of driveline work, doing the studs, bearings, stuff like that. Going to be doing some camber adjustment stuff. So there's a lot to be done here, more so than just the engine swap. So I really got to get in gear and get all this stuff going and still bring you along with. So that'll be it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.